In 1969, deep inside Fiat's Turin headquarters, a 64-year-old engineer stared at the technical blueprints scattered across his desk. He knew his masterwork would never bear the name it deserved. That man was Dante Giacosa, and he had just watched his years of revolutionary research, a revolutionary front-wheel drive design stripped from Fiat's main pipeline and handed to a minor subsidiary, simply because risk-averse executives feared change. Today we uncover an automobile that far outperformed its more famous sibling, engineered far ahead of its rivals, only to be quietly killed off because its success would embarrass its own creators. This is the story of the Autobianchi A111. To fully understand this corporate betrayal, let's trace our steps back a few years, to when Italy was experiencing its post-war economic miracle. During the 1950s, the nation transformed rapidly, and its roads flooded with cars at an unprecedented rate. Fiat dominated the entire market with near monopolistic power, churning out vehicles for every imaginable budget, from the tiny 500 to the spacious 1100. Yet a strategic dilemma haunted Turin's executives, one threatening the very future of automotive engineering front-wheel drive. During this era, the industry was undergoing a quiet revolution. Over in England, a British-Greek engineer named Alec Isagonis had unveiled the Mini in 1959, a revolutionary vehicle proving that a transverse engine could unlock unprecedented passenger space within a compact footprint. This mechanical layout had every engineer in Europe talking, and Dante Giacosa watched closely. Giacosa was no ordinary designer. He joined Fiat in 1928 as a lowly draftsman hired from a newspaper ad for 600 lira a month. And within years, he climbed to head of design, masterminding nearly every vehicle leaving Turin. The Topolino, the Seicento, the Nuova 500, and the 1100 were all his creations. He literally put Italy on wheels, but he wanted more. He aimed to refine the Mini's concept, improving it structurally to create something entirely new. The Mini had one critical flaw. Its gearbox sat inside the engine oil sump. An ingenious shortcut, but a nightmare for reliability and routine maintenance. Giacosa envisioned a different layout, placing the gearbox alongside the engine, using unequal-length drive shafts to power the front wheels. It was cleaner, more elegant, and highly efficient. Yet when he pitched this breakthrough to Fiat's board, their reaction was icy. Management flatly refused to take the risk. Rear-wheel drive worked. Customers trusted it. Why disrupt a cash cow? This is where Autobianchi enters our story. The niche brand was born in 1955, a joint venture of three Italian giants. The historic bicycle and automobile maker Bianchi, founded in 1885, Pirelli supplying the rubber, and Fiat providing the mechanical hardware. Based in Desio, the factory's real purpose was clear from day one, though corporate strategy dictated it remain unspoken. Autobianchi was a corporate guinea pig. Any technology deemed too experimental for Fiat was tested on Autobianchi vehicles first. If it worked, Fiat absorbed it. If it failed, the parent brand was protected. The 1957 Bianchina, an upscale 500 designed by Luigi Rappi, was their first test case, and its sudden market success proved the strategic formula worked. Autobianchi sold fewer units than Fiat, but at higher margins. By 1964, Giacosa finally spotted his opening. Blocked from putting front-wheel drive into a Fiat, he persuaded the board to test it on the new Autobianchi Primula. It was a brilliant chess move. The Primula debuted as the parent group's very first front-wheel drive transverse engine car, built exactly to Giacosa's specific mechanical layout, utilizing an offset gearbox and unequal drive shafts, completely bypassing the Mini's flawed setup. The Primula performed brilliantly, proving front-wheel drive was the future. Yet Giacosa wanted more. The grand project taking shape in his mind was destined to completely reshape the Fiat product line. Codenamed Project 123, it aimed to replace the aging 1300 with a modern, mid-sized, front-wheel drive family sedan. Giacosa drafted 4 competing designs, and the most advanced proposal, the 123 E4, featured the exact transverse engine front-wheel drive layout he pioneered. However, corporate politics would make this car's fate far more complex than he ever imagined. Because on the cusp of an engineering revolution, Fiat's high command made a strategic pivot that doomed the vehicle before it was even built. Led by executives who calculated financial risk instead of fostering technical progress, the board at the Lingotto reviewed the proposals for Project 123 and chose the safest path. The revolutionary E4 front-wheel drive design was abruptly discarded. In its place, corporate executives opted for a conventional front-engine, rear-wheel drive setup, which debuted in 1966 as the Fiat 124, winning Car of the Year in 1967. A decent car, certainly, but technically anchored in the past, while Giacosa endured this bitter defeat. Someone in Desio was watching the chessboard with keen interest. Enrico Goretti, general manager of Autobianchi. He understood his brand's highly vulnerable position under the massive Fiat shadow. Goretti knew that despite its mechanical excellence, the aging Primula was losing its visual appeal. More importantly, he held a piece of intelligence that deeply troubled him. Deep in Turin, Fiat was secretly developing Project X1/1, the front-wheel drive compact destined to become the Fiat 128. If Fiat launched its own front-wheel drive car, what strategic purpose did keeping the Primula alive actually serve? Autobianchi risked getting squeezed out of the family sedan market, trapped between the basic 124 and the upcoming 128. Autobianchi boss Goretti made a calculated move. He proposed salvaging a rejected Fiat prototype project, 123 E4, to serve as the foundation for their own new family sedan. This traditional three-box sedan would replace the aging Primula. Fiat executives accepted the compromise, largely because their own design center was overwhelmed by too many simultaneous projects. Recycling an existing design was a quick, cost-effective shortcut for the parent company. But Goretti's choice of a traditional three-box, four-door layout with a separate trunk was a deliberate, calculated move. The director feared that aggressive styling would alienate conservative Italian buyers who still demanded a traditional, reassuring silhouette for their family transport. As one contemporary critic noted, if you asked a child to draw a car, they would draw the exact profile of the upcoming A111. Its shape was that archetypal and familiar. So the old project was dusted off, modernized with rectangular headlights, and formally approved by Goretti for mass production. The car was designated the A111, following Fiat's internal code logic, just like the smaller A112 being developed alongside it. And here lies the fascinating paradox. The A111 was conceived as a Fiat, engineered as a Fiat, and designed by Fiat engineers in Turin. Yet, it wore an Autobianchi badge because management lacked the courage to put their own name on it. We can only wonder what would have happened if that car had launched as the Fiat 123, backed by Turin's massive commercial and marketing muscle. Under the skin, the A111 blended highly advanced engineering with more conservative, traditional mechanical solutions. The result was a curious but effective balance. Power came from a 1438 cubic centimeter pushrod four-cylinder engine, the same unit found in the Fiat 124 Special, but equipped with a twin-choke Weber carburetor that delivered far superior performance. With 70 horsepower at 5,400 revolutions per minute, it reached an official top speed of 155 kilometers per hour, though drivers knew it could easily nudge 160. Naturally, it featured front-wheel drive, utilizing a transverse engine layout. It also boasted power-assisted disc brakes on all four wheels, a premium feature competing models simply lacked. Another clever touch was the hydraulically actuated clutch designed with the slave cylinder integrated directly into the bell housing, a smart solution to maximize engine bay space and improve driver comfort. But the real surprise was its strategic focus on safety, a progressive priority that was virtually ignored by most major automakers back in 1969. The chassis featured crumple zones and a collapsible three-piece steering column designed to fold during a frontal impact. The lower dash was padded, and rear seatbelt mounts came standard. Think about that for a second. This safety engineering was years ahead of its time. In an era when most drivers dismissed seatbelts as an annoying gimmick, Autobianchi was already installing rear mounting points at the factory. The official launch took place on Tuesday, May 6, 1969, at the legendary Monza racetrack, a venue deliberately chosen to project performance. The automotive press reacted with genuine curiosity, noting its aggressive pricing of 1,316,000 lira compared to the Fiat 124 and other mid-range competitors. The A111 cost nearly as much as a Fiat, but offered advanced front-wheel drive, superior build quality, and unmatched safety features. On paper, it was an incredible value, but the showroom floor would tell a different story. The car's deadliest rival wasn't an external competitor, but a corporate threat lurking within the very group that created it. When the first models reached dealerships in the spring of 1969, anyone sitting behind the wheel was immediately struck by an unexpected premium touch for this price bracket. The dashboard was trimmed in genuine wood, not cheap molded plastic designed to mimic it, but beautifully finished timber. This warm, elegant band swept across the dash, mimicking the luxury of high-end executive sedans. The 3-gauge instrument cluster, featuring a standard tachometer, was carefully angled to minimize windshield glare. It was an ergonomic focus, revealing the almost obsessive detail poured into the cabin design. Even the floors were covered in plush carpeting, running from the passenger compartment into the trunk. The individual front seats reclined wrapped in vinyl fine cloth, or a tasteful mix of both with fabric center inserts. Yet the small details truly revealed the car's upscale ambitions. An integrated cigarette case sat right next to the gear lever, a minor luxury usually reserved for elite luxury cruisers. Rear passengers enjoyed individual armrest-mounted ashtrays, and the passenger door panel even featured a built-in purse hook, a thoughtful touch for the domestic market. Designed so buyers wouldn't have to rest bags on the floor. Up front, red warning lights were integrated directly into the door edges, a crucial safety feature that made the open doors highly visible to oncoming traffic at night. Furthermore, for the first time on an Autobianchi, not a single screw was left exposed in the cabin. Everything was concealed and beautifully finished, transforming the A111 into a refined mobile lounge. Even the trunk space was exceptionally generous for the class. Consider the vehicle's proportions. It offered a cargo capacity of over 340 liters, according to Quattro Ruote's testing, ideal for a family heading to the coast. Yet despite these qualities, Italian buyers hesitated. The underlying reason was as simple as it was frustrating. Now, you and I might find their skepticism of front-wheel drive absurd today, especially since nearly every modern car uses this exact configuration. But back in the late 1960s, the typical Italian driver dismissed front-wheel drive as an exotic, highly unreliable novelty. In contrast, the rear-wheel drive Fiat 124 offered a comforting, thoroughly familiar layout that buyers already trusted. Stepping into a dealership to buy an unproven mechanical design required a leap of faith most consumers simply refused to take, particularly when risking hard-earned family savings on a vehicle meant to last for years. How do you convince a highly skeptical public that front-wheel drive was actually superior? At the Desio headquarters, someone proposed a promotional strategy that, for the era, was nothing short of madness. In the spring of 1970, Autobianchi dealers launched a marketing campaign entirely unprecedented in Italian automotive history. They called it Prova 111, a clever pun. The concept was as bold as it was simple. Any prospective buyer could walk in and borrow an A111 for an entire afternoon, absolutely free, with 0 mileage limits. There were no prearranged routes, and crucially, no nervous salesman in the passenger seat. Their slogan captured the strategic gamble perfectly. All yours without any of us. We must appreciate just how revolutionary this gamble was. During the 1960s and 70s, a dealership test drive meant under the absolute best circumstances. A brief lap around the block, with a salesman hovering beside you critiquing your driving while aggressively pushing to close the deal. The concept of handing the keys to a complete stranger, letting them drive for hours with their families to the mountains or the coast, was completely unheard of. It was a marketing risk no other manufacturer dared to take. Soon, striking advertisements began appearing across national newspapers and magazines, featuring a mock calendar page with the morning fully booked, but the entire afternoon crossed out with a giant X, signaling that the rest of the day belonged to the A111. This campaign generated massive buzz, and strategically, it worked. Drivers were genuinely impressed, discovering firsthand how secure and responsive a front-wheel drive sedan felt on winding mountain passes and snow-covered roads. Its stability at 140 kilometers per hour, and how quiet and comfortable it remained on long journeys. But a massive strategic conflict loomed in the background, rendering all of Desio's brilliant marketing efforts practically useless. The parent company itself was actively undermining the vehicle's success because every A111 sold meant one less Fiat 124 on Turin's ledger sheets. At that exact moment, corporate strategists in Turin were orchestrating maneuvers that would seal the fate of both the sedan and the Autobianchi brand. These backdoor negotiations involved a prominent French automaker and a newly acquired Italian luxury brand. In 1968, just a year before the A111 debuted in showrooms, a crucial shift occurred. The Bianchi family sold off their remaining shares, crippled by a collapse in the motorcycle market that drained the firm's capital. Fiat seized this opportunity, fully absorbing the Desio factory and integrating it completely into their industrial empire. But Gianni Agnelli, the mastermind scaling Fiat into a multinational powerhouse, had far larger geopolitical ambitions. He signed the Pardevi Agreement, purchasing 49% of Citroën shares from Michelin to build a massive European alliance. Let's look at this plan. It was highly ambitious, establishing a powerful Franco-Italian industrial axis to dominate European sales. As a direct result, their commercial networks merged. An Italian buyer walking into an Autobianchi showroom would find the A111 parked right next to the space-age Citroën DS, and vice versa. The Italian sedan was now sold in France directly through Citroën's own dealerships. Think about this mismatch. A conventional 4-meter Italian family sedan, displayed right next to the legendary Citroën DS, perhaps the most futuristic car ever built. It was a flattering comparison technologically, as both embraced front-wheel drive design, but commercially, this bizarre pairing put the Autobianchi in an impossible position. How could an ordinary mid-range sedan compete for attention when parked next to Flaminio Bertoni's undisputed rolling masterpiece? But the fatal blow did not originate in France. It came directly from Turin when in 1969, Fiat acquired Lancia, a legendary marque celebrated for its premium engineering pedigree and glorious heritage on the rally stage. This acquisition left Fiat with 3 brands competing in dangerously overlapping market segments. Fiat targeted mass-market buyers. Lancia captured the high-end premium sector, and Autobianchi sat awkwardly squeezed in the middle. Turin executives began asking an uncomfortable existential question. Why do we need Autobianchi now? The answer came as a slow, deliberate suffocation. Marketing budgets for the sedan were quietly slashed, leaving the Prova 111 campaign as its final desperate gasp. There were no high-profile print ads, no national television spots, and no major showcase displays at the international auto salons. Meanwhile, the traditional Fiat 124 received massive corporate backing, while Lancia engineers were already developing their next front-wheel drive platform, the Beta. This front-wheel drive sedan was strategically positioned to occupy the exact market segment of the A111. The corporate trap was closing by autumn 1970 at the 52nd Turin Motor Show. Autobianchi unveiled the second series A111, a noble but desperately late attempt to revive a model already losing crucial ground. The cosmetic updates were minor but noticeable. Doubled taillights gave the rear a slightly more modern, distinctive signature. The chrome trim on the hood vents was eliminated for a cleaner front end, while the heavy bumper guards made way for a modern, full-length rubber insert, a practical design choice to minimize urban parking damage. Inside the cabin, however, the revisions were far deeper, proving the engineers in Desio had not given up. Elegant wood trim now reached the upper door panels. They added a sleeker steering wheel from the Fiat 125 and repositioned the shifter backward to improve ergonomics, making gear changes feel far more intuitive. The glove box was strategically moved beneath the dashboard on the passenger side, a position far more accessible, while the fuse box migrated from the center console to the classic Fiat position under the left dash, easing maintenance. These were sensible, thoughtful refinements, proving that the engineers and designers in Desio still cared deeply about their product. But why polish a car that corporate headquarters had already condemned to death? Why add wood trim when Fiat refused to spend a single lira advertising this sedan's existence? This second Series A111 was a fine new suit tailored for a condemned man, striking but utterly powerless to change the execution date. Predictably, sales remained stagnant, not because the car itself was flawed, but because Turin had already designated a corporate successor that would not carry the Autobianchi badge. The final strategic blow fell in November 1972, swift and brutal. The A111 was quietly erased from price lists without warning or clearance sales. Not even a press release acknowledged its death. One day it was in the catalog, the next it vanished. Dealerships registered the remaining stock over the following months, dragging the model's public life into 1973, long after the factory line had actually stopped. Desio produced just under 57,000 units in only 3 years, a figure detailing a tragedy of wasted potential. By then, the Lancia Beta was ready for its debut, and Fiat decreed that the future of front-wheel drive mid-size sedans belonged to its historic luxury division, not a small suburban subsidiary. Autobianchi was stripped of its only family sedan, demoted to a niche brand with a single vehicle in its entire catalog. The tiny A112 condemned to stay trapped forever in the city car segment. Yet a deep irony hides behind this corporate retreat. The technology deemed too risky for the Fiat badge would soon become the standard for the entire global automotive industry. When Fiat finally launched the 128 in 1969 under its own name, using the front drive layout Giacosa pioneered on the Primula and perfected on the A111, the automotive landscape shifted forever. The Fiat 128 swept Car of the Year in 1970, proving once and for all that the Piedmontese engineer's design, mounting the gearbox in line with the crankshaft, with unequal length half shafts, was vastly superior to any rival. Yet corporate history forgets that this game-changing layout logged its first crucial miles inside an Autobianchi, not a Fiat. Turin executives simply refused to risk the parent brand's reputation on unproven innovations. Then came a strategic validation. Peugeot, which had long copied the Mini design of putting the gearbox inside the oil sump, watched Italy's engineering closely. Throughout the 70s and 80s, they quietly abandoned their own layout to adopt Giacosa's brilliant architecture wholesale. Volkswagen copied it for the iconic Golf. Renault, Opel, Ford of Europe, Toyota, and Honda soon followed. One by one, every major manufacturer on Earth capitulated to this layout dreamed up by an engineer from Nice and field-tested. First time on Italian roads under a badge almost no one outside of Italy recognized. Today, in the 21st century, nearly every front-wheel drive car built globally relies on the Giacosa layout, not Mini's design, and not Citroën's. But the system bearing the name of the man Fiat forced to bury his finest ideas in a budget brand. Dante Giacosa left Fiat on January 29, 1970, when executives granted him an honorary consultancy, a polite euphemism masking his forced retirement due to age limits. He was 65, with 42 years spent entirely inside those corporate technical offices. From his start as a lowly draftsman to his final days as division director and board member. In retirement, he documented his struggles, publishing memoirs like Fiat Projects before the computer, while keeping a watchful eye on the automotive landscape until his passing in Turin in 1996. He was 91, leaving behind a final, revealing passage in his memoirs that perfectly captures his intellect. He wrote, "I pity those who classify and judge everything without that tremor of uncertainty when facing the future or the profound emotion of doubt." Autobianchi, however, survived the death of the A111. saved by a car that was the polar opposite of that doomed sedan. The A112, a spirited super mini launched alongside the A111, became a massive hit, especially the legendary Abarth version, which went on to enjoy a 17-year production run. From 1969 to 1986, selling over 1.2 million units, this massive success proved Desio was highly capable of competing when given the chance. Yet Fiat strategically blocked Autobianchi, refusing to let them ever re-enter the lucrative family sedan market. That market was handed to Lancia, leaving the Desio plant strategically trapped in the small car segment until its dying days. The final act came in 1985 with the Y10, badged as a Lancia abroad but an Autobianchi at home, the pioneer for Fiat's new fire engine. When production ended in 1995, the Autobianchi brand was quietly executed, fully absorbed by Lancia without a single word of recognition. The Desio factory, a massive 140,000 square meter complex built on post-war optimism, was systematically torn down. Today, of a facility that pumped out over 200 cars a day, virtually nothing remains except an office block and a small historic villa housing retired Fiat workers. Meanwhile, the elegant and highly advanced A111, an innovative sedan designed to rewrite this brand's entire destiny, has been largely dismissed by modern collectors. You can find a pristine model today for a mere €5,000, an absurdly low price compared to technically inferior cars from the exact same era. Spotting one at a show is extremely rare, and younger car enthusiasts barely even know it existed. And yet, next time you and I step into a modern front-wheel drive car, we are driving a direct evolution of that forgotten sedan. Because the technology you and I take for granted was born right there between Turin and Desio, engineered by a genius who wanted to rewrite history inside a factory that was strategically strangled before it could. If you want to uncover more overlooked history about the machines that shaped our world, hit that like button. Tell us in the comments which forgotten car we should investigate next, and subscribe so you never miss a case. Let's meet again for our next historical investigation on wheels.